David Cunliffe.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. Rise to take a final call in part 4 of the bill and wish to address the House to the issue of foreign superannuation. Clauses 71, 75, 96, 133, 145, 213, 256 and 260, which admittedly spans a couple of parts, but they are related. May I make two, Mr Chairman, preliminary comments? The first is that we commend the objectives which the government has set out here to make a number of remedial changes that clarify, I think the operative word is clarify, aspects of the rules applying to foreign superannuation interests and ensure that the new rules operate as intended. Members and the Minister will of course know that foreign superannuation has for many years been a bit of a bugbear. Foreign residents who move to New Zealand who have been contributing members to foreign superannuation schemes typically must report those investments to the New Zealand IRD. They forego their entitlements and are replaced by New Zealand superannuation in general. There is a lot of fine print around that, including whether the New Zealand or the migrant to New Zealand has been in a tax-based scheme or a contributory scheme, and the tax consequences if their contribution level has been above the minimum. And it's around those grey areas that some of these changes are addressed. The second preliminary comment, sir, is it's an absolute honour to be doing some more work in the area of superannuation. So the key features of the proposed changes include, firstly, ensuring that foreign superannuation rules under the Foreign Investment Fund, or FIF rules, apply to interest acquired when a person was a New Zealand tax resident under domestic law but is not resident in New Zealand under a double tax agreement, as can often happen. Secondly, to reintroduce the exclusion from the FIF rules for interests in registered Australian superannuation schemes acquired while a person was a New Zealand resident. And so that provision is a pretty interesting one to reflect upon at this time when New Zealanders who are resident for most of their lives in Australia and are paying into contributory schemes like Medicare and Medicaid in Australia cannot qualify to draw down the benefits of those schemes. And this side of the House, sir, has been at some pains to point out the inequity in that people who might have been born in New Zealand, move to Australia when they're 2 or 3 years old, work for 40 years, paid into the Australian tax system. When they get old or they get sick, they can't qualify because there's no process under Australian law for the vast majority of New Zealanders resident in New Zealand to qualify for permanent residency. And here, sir, in this part 4, we are reintroducing the exclusion from the FIF rules for interests in registered Australian schemes acquired while a person was a New Zealand resident. That is, we're making it easier for Australians who were New Zealand residents and had interests in Australian schemes to ensure that they don't miss out on the tax benefits in New Zealand, that it's fair and equitable for them. Why is the government not doing more to ensure that New Zealanders who have lived all their lives in Australia but who cannot qualify for permanent residence are not treated with an equal degree of fairness in the Australian system? Sir, the third key feature of the foreign superannuation provisions of the bill is to ensure that the schedule method in the foreign superannuation rules applies to lump sum withdrawals and transfers from a foreign superannuation interest, and the sub-point is if the taxpayer has less than $50,000 of foreign investment fund interest. Let's translate that into English. What that means is that the schedule method, the particular way that the tax rate applies to different levels of investment, applies not only to periodic payments like annuities, but also to lump sum transfers. So someone has a superannuation scheme, they can elect either to keep paying into it, they turn, say, 65, they get an annuity from it, or under certain circumstances, they may be able to take a lump sum investment But, sir, there has been confusion around the margin. Sir, Mr Chairman, Mr Chairman.
The Honourable Hikia Parata.
Mr Chair, I'd like to take the opportunity to respond